Hey folks, Jeff Goldberg here, Fish 307, and I got Mike with me. Call him Downrigger Mike. And today we're going to put a new power cord onto an older Canon Downrigger, and so it's going to be a little bit of a long video. We're going to do step by step, so you see all of the steps involved in doing it. Okay, so all right, we're going to start with this Downrigger right here. And what's going to happen is Mike already started a little bit, but he's going to take out the rest of the screws on the cover. All right. All right, so in order to change the wire, we're changing this wire because of what it is. It's all coming apart, and we're going to be replacing it with a new retrofit kit from Canon, directly from the factory. It's got both sides of a new wire. All right, there are 3 bolts. You can see one right there. We got a little flashlight there. There you go. There's one there, and there's one right there, and then there's one on the top. Oh, there it is. There's a third one. Okay, so 1, 2, and then the third one is down over here. Okay, so we need to take those out. What size are they? 3/8?
They are 3/8.
Yeah, they're 3/8. So we're using a 1/4-inch drive. You don't need a lot here. 3/8 ratchet. And what we're doing is we're removing the motor box from the frame in order to get this thing apart so we can get to the motor box without any interference. Now Mike has done this about, I don't know, 600, 700, 800 times or more, and so he's our resident expert. All right, so that's actually a brake tool for a brake spring tool, but it's really good for separating the motor housing because of the Dow 795 silicone that they use to put these things together from the factory. So that's a really good tool for separating that out. And there you have it. Now you have your motor box separated out. Okay, Mike, do your thing.
Yeah, now we come over here and take it all apart.
Right, so next thing we're going to do really is going to take the switches out. Okay, so that's the boot cover for the switch, and then he'll take the boot cover off for the breaker. Canon uses a really nice heavy-duty boot, and that's why they're a little bit more expensive, but they're definitely worth it. All right, so they're both out of there.
Now you got the 3 Allens there.
Right, you got 3. Okay, so you got to take the motor out too. So, see, the motor is held in by 3 Allen screws on the back. What size is that? I don't even know anymore.
No.
Well, we'll try and figure it out, but
now you just flip it over, lift the motor out. And that comes right out. Take your breaker out.
yeah, so you can leave everything hooked up. In other words, so it's all still together. The only wires you're really going to need to remove are going to be the power wires,
The ground wire,
the ground wire on the circuit board, and the positive wire on the back of the breaker. And those are the 2 heaviest wires, so it's easy to figure out where to put them back in. You just take all of that out in one piece and put it aside. Okay. And then what you have is you have an empty motor box. Now we can tell this is a little bit older motor box because it has the tape in there, so And some of the older ones, they put some tape to hold the board in. It's not necessary though. So if you don't have it, don't worry about it. And if you do have it and it's there, you can leave it there, but it's probably not going to work anymore. The adhesive's no good. So, okay, so now we have this part here, the keeper, the wire keeper, and Mike's going to get that out. And what he's going to do is he's going to squeeze it, and he's going to pull. There it is. Nice and easy. And we're actually not going to use that one again because in the kit comes one for the bigger wire. All right, so here's our kit.
Okay, what you have to do is drill that hole out.
Okay, so that hole needs to be bigger. Open the kit. And hold on just a second. Okay, so there are instructions here on how big and the hole needs to be and where to put it. The keeper, which is right here, is much bigger than the original one, so you won't go into that hole. It won't go into this original hole. So what we have, how we do this is Mike's got a step drill, and you need to turn this oval hole into a 3/4 inch hole, and so that's what he's going to do right now. That's it. Okay, so now he's got a 3/4 inch hole, so when we go to put this together, this will fit in there with the wire. Anyway, that'll fit. The new keeper will fit in there with the new wire, which is right here. What you're gonna do?
Okay, what you got is you got this round hole, and for that keeper to lock in, it has to have a little shelf on the inside. So if you look, you can see that right on the very edge, it's got like an outline of where you want to go with it. What I used is a Dremel tool with a flat disc on it, and this is how I do it.
Okay, so there was a shelf with the old one, which he probably could have shown you, but so what he did is he just mimicked that shelf with the new hole. Then you get the plastic out of there. It's Lexan actually, and which is a kind of plastic.
May have to go a little bit more on the side.
About half the thickness, right?
Yep.
It's about half the thickness of the whole thing. Yeah, it sounds like you're at the dentist, but you're not.
You just want to be careful not to go all the way through and make the hole too big.
Right, that's a problem. Then the keeper doesn't hold the wire.
There. See, the outside stays the same. It's just a modification to the inside.
Where'd the wire go? Okay, so the wire comes put together. They don't come apart that easy. We'll just pop that apart. The male side is the side that goes to
Your bag.
the downrigger. The male side's on the downrigger side. Okay, so that's the male side, and that's on the downrigger side. The female side, right here, goes to your battery, and that doesn't have any terminals on it. The male side has the terminals on it. Okay, so now we're installing the keeper. It's a little tricky. You got to get your pliers on it and squeeze pretty hard. Mike's got iron hands here, that's what we call them, because he seems to be able to squeeze anything. But there we go. This is a little bit of a tricky operation. You get as flat a pair of pliers as you can so you can squeeze it and push at the same time so it's not taking up the space. There it is. All right, and now what he's going to do is, so he's checked it to make sure that it's in there nice and tight. Here's all the parts again. I'm going to lay it all back in there. Okay, switch is easier because that's on the bottom. And when you put the switch in, usually the blue wire is on
the bottom.
Yeah, the blue wire is on, that's what we call is the bottom. Okay, and then the white wire is always in the middle and the purple wire is on the top.
And your spades are facing away from you.
Right, and the spades are facing down toward the inside of the unit.
Your red wire goes back on your circuit breaker. The black wire goes back on your get the wire under there. We go. Black wire goes back on the spade that's
empty. It's the only one that's empty. It's on the end of the board. There we go.
Then
you put your breaker back in. Usually the wires are facing down on the breaker as well, just to make sure that they don't hit the top when you put the thing back together. You put the cover back on. It is a little bit tight in there. And that board just kind of lays in there. Yep. Just push the motor back in and you flip it back over on the table. Take your 3 Allen head bolts. They're cat bolts is what they're used here. And you just do them snug. You know, you get all 3 in there snug and you make sure that they're tight evenly, and that's pretty much the torque on it.
That's it.
All right.
Then
we get to there,
and
we come. Yep. Then what we do is we plug them in, make sure they work. Our bench is set up for all the different brands and styles of downriggers. Look at that, beautiful. And the short stop, we check to make sure that works, which it does. And how the short stop works on this, we'll just go through that a little bit. Is that it needs to be grounded. All right. So what we did with this green wire here actually goes to ground on the cable itself, but because it's not all hooked up right now, and then the cable, because the motor is grounded to the boat, which is grounded to the water, we simulate that with a ground wire that goes to an extra battery here. So what we do is we put that onto here, and you can probably hear that, and when I take it off, it turns off. So that's how we check the short stop, to make sure that it automatically stops. Okay, so now The next.
This I gotta go through. I gotta put new nylon bearings.
Okay. So what we're gonna do next is we have to strip all the cable off, which Mike will do. Might as well get that started. Because we're gonna rebuild this whole thing, so we're gonna put new nyliners on it and make sure that everything is in good shape. So because, you know, obviously we're a repair center, we have what Downrigger that we built years ago is called we call it the winder, and so we can automatically with power strip off the cable and then put it back on. If you have two downriggers, you can use your second downrigger to do the same thing. You just crimp the two cables together, and you wind all the cable onto one, and then you can wind it back on. When you get to the crimp, you cut both ends and then re-terminate it.
See how that wobbles in there? That tells me that the nyliners are bad. You can hear it hitting on the sides.
Yeah. All right. So we're at the end here, and as you can see, so this is a thing. As you see this set screw. So that set screw is setting up a little bit higher than the inside. This is how the shortstop works. The cable is grounded to that set screw, which grounds to the drive shaft right in there, which goes to the gear, which hooks to the motor, which goes to the board, and that's how that secondary ground gets made. That's kind of it's good to know that that's how it works. So on occasion, on the older downriggers, instead of using a long set screw, they used a short set screw and a dielectric piece of rubber. And if you changed the cable at some point, the rubber fell out or it stopped conducting electricity, and that's why your shortstop doesn't work oftentimes. So, okay, so Mike's got all the cable off and he's got it clipped and out of the way. And so now what he's going to do is he's going to take the shaft off. So he's taking the clutch knob off, and then there's two washers, which I'm going to show you also. There's one of them in there. Now, oftentimes on these downriggers, how do they look? Aha, perfect. So these washers have this nice machined looking groove in them. It's not supposed to be there. They're supposed to be smooth like that. And a lot of times when you're downrigger, you hear it kind of grinding and crunching a little bit. And that's the reason why, is because they have that groove in there, which is over torqued this bearing. So you need to replace this bearing and these washers. So when we do a maintenance service here, we always replace those. Now what he's going to do is he's going to pull that inner shaft out that the clutch knob was on. There it is. And now he's going to loosen up that set screw. We don't. Doesn't usually have to come out all the way.
I always take them all the way out so I can find the hole when I put them back together.
That makes sense.
Because there's a hole in this drive axle that
Right.
this set screw has to line up into.
And there's a hole on the other side which you use to line it all up with another. You put an Allen key through so it hits that hole, and then you can spin it around. We'll show you that too. So there's that set screw, and it's a chisel tip. It's a special tip. You can, if you look at it closely, it's got a square end on it. And so when Mike takes that out, when he takes apart or takes that shaft out, okay, if you look at the hole, here, why don't you put that together? You can see that square tip fits right into that hole. Okay, and that's how that whole thing moves together. So it's very important that goes like that.
If it's not like that, your
Yeah.
main spool's just going to spin around on it.
Right. Sometimes you get it tight enough, but then it'll slip and you get the main spool. So you slide your counter back with the gear, and then your... Now, oftentimes with these downriggers, you'll notice that they may scrape a little bit, so you need to take your spool and pull on it all the way around and make sure that it's not cracked on the inside. And unfortunately, they've discontinued this spool, so this one's in good shape, so we're good. Now, the next part is these little nye liners. Okay, now they don't look like much, but they wear out, and that's why that was scraping a little bit. That's actually a nylon bearing, and so we're going to go get, what's the part number on that, Mike? 9010001. To get that 9010001. We'll put a list of all the parts you need to do this.
What I gotta do is I gotta get this glue off.
Right, so you use a scraper of some sort. What we have is actually I believe it's a carpet knife that we use. You use a putty knife or whatever, just need to get it off clean.
And there's a spacer.
Right. Yep, this is a spacer for the spool, keeps the spool from moving too much. So that kind of goes over here. It's usually opposite side of the counter. So you see the nye liner here has, I'll get it to see, there's a like a tit right there, and that goes into a slot inside. So when you line that up, you want to, it's got to go until it goes in smooth. Now, if you have an older unit, it might not have the slot in it, but the new one will. And there's a slot in the downrigger. So anyway, that's that. So next thing we do is we usually put a little dab of, we use Blu-ray grease. This is what the factory recommends. So Mike will take a dab because that dab will do you. And you put it right on the shaft. That's the outer shaft. So there's two shafts. You have the outer shaft that the spool goes on, and then the inner shaft, which is what drives the motor, and it's what the clutch is on.
Sometimes this can be a bear to get in.
Yeah, it's Mike's first day, so he'll make it up as he goes here.
See, I'm looking down the hole in the spool and line the hole for that set screw to go into. Now one side of the spool is threaded and the other side isn't. And of course I got the side that's not. So just hold the shaft, spin the spool, in there.
All right. Okay, so we're going to put a new clutch pad on it. When I do this, you want to check the on the shaft to make sure that these aren't pointy and that they're nice and round and even, because that's one of the things that wears out on them. This shaft is in good shape, so we're going to replace, like I showed you, the washers, this thrust washer and that bearing for the other side. Okay, that's the clutch side, so you get a washer and then the thrust washer and then the bearing, which Mike put a dab of grease on, a little bit of blue, just a dab of the Blu-ray, and then alrighty, and now comes the fun part. I'm gonna have to put the motor housing back on. Okay, so he's taking it off. Okay, so this is what's recommended by the factory. This is a Dow Corning 795. It's very much like roofing mastic. And the reason why we use this is because the frame and the motor housing made out of Lexan, and so chemically regular silicone is too hot and it'll melt it, kind of turns it into jelly. So this is the stuff that you need to use. You can buy a tube of this, cost you anywhere from $15 to $25 depending upon where you go. You know, you can get it at hardware stores or a super center, you know, lumber yard type of place. We don't want to be endorsing anybody, so. But that's what you need, Corning 795. Okay, so there's our motor assembly that Mike reassembled with the wire on it. And he's gonna line that back up. We've got the 3 bolts right there, and his 3/8 inch quarter drive socket that we used. He uses needle nose pliers just to line them up and get them dropped in there, because your fingers don't fit. Yeah, sometimes a little tricky to get the holes lined up. Not too bad though. You get 2 of the screws in, the third one will drop right in, no problem. And they all go in easy. So we torque this up pretty much the same way as we put the motor housing in, you know. I mean, put the motor into the housing itself.
My magnetic.
There it is. Okay. So we'll just tighten that one in. And we'll do the third one. It should be right in there. Yeah, watch you do this one. There, you can see the hole. Okay.
I don't know why these pliers became magnetic all of a sudden. Get back here.
All right, so just to check, we put it together. He's going to give it power again. And the other thing about it is he wants to be able to wind the cable back onto the spool. So that thing's working good. And if you wanted to right now, we can check the shortstop again.
Do it through this.
Yep, well, yep. So he's going to... Okay, so on the Canon Downrigger here, what you have is there's a little hole on the top of this, inside the spool, and you're going to put your cable into that hole, and you grab some needle nose. You're going to pull the cable out from over here. Grab it from inside where you can see it, but you'll see it when you're there it is. Okay, and then you put a crimp sleeve on the end there. And clip it off so it's got a nice clean end. And you'll put a crimp sleeve on there, and then it won't pull back through. We're lucky today. We got Downrigger Mike, the best downrigger technician in the country, right here. He's done thousands and thousands of downriggers. How long are you doing this now? 10, 12 years?
10 years.
10 years. It's his retirement job.
Yep. What I normally do is I put that crimp sleeve in there, and then where you would normally crimp a wired butt connector,
right.
You just put a little bit to it to bend it. That makes it better, so you know that's not going to come off.
He's going to trim the tag end, that wire, so it doesn't rub inside the frame.
Now just pull it back and make sure it seats in where it's supposed to go. And there you go.
All right, so now you're going to wind all that cable back on that we just wound off.
I try to get as much onto that set screw as I possibly can so that I can make sure that shortstop works.
There it is. So he's got the ground on that wire, which simulates the water. The shortstop's working fine. Like I said earlier, if you have two electric downriggers, you can use one to wind with, and then you wind it back. You just loosen the clutch up on the other one. We do so many of them here that we built that winder just for this purpose. If we need to replace wire on a rigger, we'll just wind it on there and leave it, which is nice and clean. But then we'll put new wire on. This particular downrigger has really good cable on it. But if your cable is 3, 4, 5 years old, you can't see it, but it does get brittle from winding on, winding off, winding on, winding off. So you should replace it. It work hardens and it'll get a little brittle, and if you hit something or grab the bottom, there's a good chance it'll break. And then it gets to be an expensive day because you got your ball down there, and a lot of times your release is attached to the ball and the cable and everything else. So it's a good preventative to put new cable on every couple of years. Or if you grab the bottom and stretched it out, it's time to replace the cable. All right, in this case, we don't have the boom to terminate it. I don't think we have the booms anyway. Yeah, so we're not going to terminate it. So how we do that is we'll put a rubber band on the cable and then just wrap it around. So if you see one like that, it's a good way to store them. Now while Mike's doing that, I'm just going to show you. So the customer, you know, these are older downriggers. This is the newer style boom end with the pulley on it. This is a huge product improvement. You can buy the old ones, although I'm pretty sure the factory is going to discontinue them. This will fit right into your telescopic boom. If you have a fixed boom, there's a sleeve that they sell, or a kit that has the sleeve with it that'll go into your fixed boom. So this is a huge product improvement. They work better than the old ones, so I highly recommend it. Even if you're not doing any service work, just to update your downrigger. Alright. I think he's got that all set up, and he's going to put the... We put a little bend in the end of the cable, and then this will come around and hook onto it.
See, I told you it wouldn't hurt.
So what we did here is we put 2 nyliners in. We replaced the 2 nyliners. We put in the bearing and 2 thrust bearing washers and a new clutch pad, and then we lubed it up. You don't want to put too much grease in there. This one had a good amount of grease. It was good. You need to scrape off all of this adhesive that's on there, which Mike will do. He scraped it off on the frame itself, and then he put some new stuff. And then what we'll do is we'll scrape it all off of here, same way. And when we put it on, that's what kind of makes it more watertight and seals it up. Again, it is not regular silicone. It is Dow Corning 795, which is very much like a roofing mastic. And then we're going to seal it back up. And we replaced the old, obviously the reason for the job was to replace the old wire, which we did. This particular customer had on his own end. He's got the new style now. And the new wire is a little heavier gauge. It'll do the amperage better. It'll make your board last longer, make your motor last longer. This is a nice downrigger. It's in great shape and it's ready to go. Anyway, thanks for watching. Say hi. Say bye, Mike.
Bye.
Thanks for watching,
Have
everybody.
a great day.
As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook. Thank you.